Very pleased here to be with my great friend from down south, Josh Goforth. Josh is going to be joining us here this weekend for our featured guest artist subscription series, where you're going to really get to enjoy him doing various things, everything from storytelling to playing the vast majority of the bluegrass instruments that you might be familiar with, from banjo to guitar, all the way down to probably maybe even a little spoons and paper bag.
You
So
never know.
you never know what might pop out. So I'm really, really excited to share Josh with our community. I think it's something that we'll really enjoy, as I've found that there are many parallels between our community here, being primarily Dutch, and the communities that Josh and I grew up in that are primarily Scotch-Irish in descent. So to start off with, I'm just going to jump in with our first question, and then I'll let our administrative assistant, Kendra, kind of guide us from there. But Josh, I've known you for, gosh, it's been 30 plus years now, I guess. And I know that you are obviously a storyteller and that you've played music all of your life. But can you talk to us a little bit about how you got started? I know you mentioned that as a middle schooler, you had some interesting things happen that exposed you to both storytelling and music that led you into this wonderful career that you've had for the past 20 plus years.
Yeah, well, I was lucky because growing up in Western North Carolina, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a banjo player or fiddle player. So it was great to get to grow up around a lot of musicians. I like to consider myself to be kind of a part of a blended family. And by that, I mean my mom and dad's family grew up on different creek beds. So, my mom's family were really the religious music people. So my granddad was a singing school leader, and he taught shape note singing, which is where you put a shape to each note of the scale. And so I was singing that way and hearing that kind of music from the earliest age. So I kind of had this understanding of harmony when I was a little kid, sitting next to my granddad in the church choir
Mm.
singing shape note. Then when I got to be about 4 years old, uh, my uncle had a piano, and I just started messing around with it, and I found that I could find melodies just on my own, and just was kind of musical from the get go. But I didn't get serious about it until I was about 9 years old. My great uncle found a guitar that he wasn't playing. He let me have it, and he showed me a couple of chords on it. Then my other great uncle showed me some more chords and showed me to play the Wildwood Flower from Mother Maybelle Carter of the Carter family. And I was just hooked. I was hooked, and I couldn't stop. I mean, I would come home from school, I would play until I fell asleep, get up the next day, do the same thing again. And I found that there were many people in the community who I knew that played this type of music. I didn't even know they played, but they played a couple of chords, and they said, "Oh yeah, I used to play old country songs," and they were so willing to show me what they knew. So my starting music was literally my family getting me introduced to it on both sides, and then finding out that I had a community that was really just a uh, perfect opportunity for me to learn from older musicians who were willing to share their information. So that's the way I got started.
It's funny how that works because that's very similar to my introduction into the bluegrass genre and country and stuff. Of course, both of us having been in band growing up. My dad was a banjo player, so
Mm-hmm.
literally all I had to do was throw a rock in the house and you could hit one.
Yeah, right.
But uh,
And you
but yeah,
probably
that's
wouldn't want to if you
interesting.
heard banjo a lot.
Exactly, yeah. In fact, he just passed a couple years ago, and I have his banjo at home. I keep meaning to learn how to play it. That's one of my long list of things to do. But yeah, that's the great thing that I found about, the folk music of Appalachia is it's all taught by ear, and it's all handed down from person to person. It's a real personable style of music, which is awesome. Well, Kendra, I'll let you take over with the questions here. I know you've got some other stuff that I think you'll ask that our community will enjoy hearing from Josh.
And the best time to play banjo is 4 a.m., right?
Yeah.
You know what? My papaw used to wake me up. There was a couple winters that I spent with my papaw, and I remember waking up at 4:30, and he would be in the living room playing his banjo. He played clawhammer style, and
Right.
he was just tearing it up 4:30 in the morning. I don't know how my mom ever slept through it, but she did.
Well, I think, one of the great things about, again, growing up here is the music is just part of cultural life. One of the things that you asked me was about how I got into music, but also how I got into storytelling.
Hmm.
And it's, there's no separating the two really for
Right.
Appalachian culture. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to learn these tunes so bad, and I would go to these older folks' houses, and they'd play a tune, and then they sit and talk for 20 minutes. And I thought, when are they ever going to shut up and play another tune? And so we went through this process of, oh, we'll all talk a while. What's old so and so doing? How's this going? Where did you know that tune? Who'd you learn it from? You know, just on and on. And then finally they'd play the tune, and I would finally get to learn it. But as I grew older and started doing my stage shows, what I realized was that's the model. The
The
model
stories
is
are
the
part of
front
it.
porch. It's the
Yep.
front porch, and we sit around. We're all talking together. You're a part of it, and then we just play a couple songs. Then we talk a little more, and that's when I learned to embrace that as a part of my stage performance. That's when I became a better performer. Is to completely go back to being myself. And the hardest thing to learn, I think, as a musician, is how to be yourself on stage.
Mhm.
So it was just a matter of going back to that model, the cultural model.
That's awesome.
You know, before I get to my question, I just wanted to say I like to write, Josh, and I find myself often getting first lines for poems from stories that my relatives will tell. My uncle said once, "Did I ever tell you about the disc golfer who numbered his socks?" And I said, wait, I'm writing that down. So those stories are gold. Anyway, speaking of stories, you and Dr. Rose go way back. How did you connect years ago? And what caused you to say yes to this invitation?
It's a good question. We connected obviously because he's from this region and I'm from this region, and we both went to East Tennessee State for as a part of our education. I was in the bluegrass program and did a lot of performance that way, but I also was in the regular band program because when I got into middle school, not only was I into guitar and fiddle and banjo, but you know, I started playing trumpet and really fell in love with the whole idea and concept of band in general, just people coming together, playing music, uh, group effort, learning from each other, and creating a concert. So I went into music education, and that's the way I met Onsby. And we're also fraternity brothers through Phi Mu Alpha Symphonia.
That's right.
So we are brothers for life, and I feel like brothers in music for life as well, not just through the fraternity. But getting to meet Onsby, he was always so dedicated to what he was doing. And I think you learn things from different people that you meet, both for the furtherment of your own career, but also what to kind of avoid. And Onsby's one of those people that I feel like is a really good role model for musicians in general and for people in general on how to live their life. He's disciplined. He loves what he does. He's organized. And so when he called me for this event, because it was Onsby, I said, it's going to be good and I want to do it. So
That's wonderful. That's great. Lastly, Josh, I've seen recordings of your music and stories. The playing is phenomenal and the stories are side splitting. But I'm sure that Northwest Iowa would like to hear it from you. What do you hope folks in this area will gain from coming to this concert, the guest concert on Friday?
well, I think my number one goal as in my performances, and I like to think of them as this is a whole group. We're all coming together. We're doing this together, just like it's on the front porch. I hope that they're able to forget about all their worries, all their troubles for that amount of time they have with me and be able to cry, laugh, tap their foot, sing, all of the things to just be totally immersed in the music and stories from my neck of the woods. At the same time, I feel like uh, the other part of my role as a performer is to breathe life into these characters. I mean, I hope at the end of my performance, you actually feel like you know who my granddad was. You feel like you can picture him in any situation. I mean, this is a man who 6 months before he died went to the funeral home and asked him how much it would cost to be stuffed because he wanted to be stuffed, placed next to this state maintained road at his house with a donation box in his hand for the upkeep of the road. Now, what kind of a person is that? And you know, it's like you picture this person in all these different scenarios and situations. And so through my stories and performance, I want to introduce people to those family members and those friends that I grew up around. Show people, you know, I grew up in a place that was kind of 50 years behind the times. You know, some of my great grandparents didn't have electricity or running water. It's hard to imagine that my generation actually, you know, have connection to that sort of living. But those last vestiges of that old school way of living, you know, from the early Americans who got here, it was still going. And I'm probably the last generation to see that. And so it's important, I think, to share that, to breathe life into these characters and this music with people. So,
You know, one of the things that I love so much about what you do is I can recall when I was in early high school, late middle school, and my dad started teaching me how to play guitar. And one of the things he told me was, he said, Onsby, if you don't learn this, when I die, it'll be gone. And I think that's one of the most awesome things about what you do is there's so much history in Appalachia. There's so much, so many of these characters, like you talk about, like your granddad, that if we don't learn these stories and if we don't learn these tunes and if we don't pass them on to our children, then they'll die with us.
They're gone.
That would be very sad.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, there's some great things about our modern way of connecting with people. There's some great things to be able to just, you know, with the touch of my finger, be able to contact an old high school friend, or, you know, to be on social media and just be able to see everybody's lives and the way everybody works and all that stuff. That there's some good things and bad things about that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is sad is that because things are becoming so much more homogenized, we're losing a lot of those cultural characters that I grew up with. And so
Right.
it's kind of, it kind of in a lot of ways brings to my, people start thinking about the characters in their lives, and they start thinking about, oh, well, my granddad used to do this, and I didn't think that was so weird until I started telling other people about it. In other words, this is the only way that people stay alive, is through our stories. Things like land and money and all these, you know, assets that people pass down. That's not the way people live on. It's really through the stories that we tell about them.
Right.
Same way with the music. It's about passing it down in this way and letting people not only know the history and be able to play it historically like we play it, but also take it and use their own personal feeling for music and run with it and create something completely new. So
Yep.
it's a real rewarding thing to hope to be that bridge between those two ideas.
Well, you got to make me one promise. Whatever stories you tell, you have to tell Northwest Iowa about the Buzzard Baptists.
Okay.
Yes, please. We like that one.
I will definitely tell one of my church stories.
Good. I know that they'll love that. I've told it. Our pastor, we got together the other night with a group of guys, and I was mentioning it to them, and everybody was just hooting and hollering because they thought it was so funny. So I know the community would enjoy that. We're obviously, as I've told you, we're a very religiously steeped community here, primarily Christian Reformed Church, which is very, very similar to Baptist in most ways. So they will get a good kick out of that.
They'll understand it.
For sure.
Yes. Yeah.
As long as they can understand me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for your time. And we're looking forward to meeting you and all your relatives Friday night here in Sioux Center, part of NISO's guest concert. And that'll be Friday at 7:30 in the BJ Hahn. Thank you so much.
Can't wait to be there. It's going to be fun.